Picture a stone hallway that seems to drink sound. Lamps line the walls, but their glow feels less like fire and more like awareness, steady, watchful. You walk deeper and the air changes the way it changes in a sanctuary. Not colder, not warmer, just quieter, as if the silence has weight. On the far wall, painted in lapis and gold, stands the ibis-headed scribe with a reed pen poised above a tablet. Thoth. In myth, Thoth is not the god of spectacle. He is the god of measurement. He keeps the records, names the forces, calibrates the scales. When others argue, he writes what is true. When a soul swears it is lost, he marks the exact place it turned. He is the kind of deity you consult for laws. And if Thoth were to hand you one law about success, one that sounds like a paradox until you feel it in your bones, it would be this: the more you chase what you want, the more you delay it. That's not a moral warning, and it's not a cute quote. It's a mirror. Because the universe, in these older traditions, is responsive not only to what you ask for, but to the inner posture from which you ask. Thoth's reverse success rule isn't telling you to want less. It's showing you what happens when desire turns into pursuit. Wanting can be clean. Wanting can be a compass, a simple leaning toward a direction that makes sense. But chasing is wanting with fear mixed in. Chasing is the mind whispering, if I don't get this soon, something about me will be proven wrong. It's desire fused to self-worth. And now your goal isn't just an outcome. It becomes a verdict about your value. That fusion changes your signal. When you chase, you believe you're moving toward the object, but you're also broadcasting a message about your relationship to it. And the message is rarely, "This is arriving." The message is, "This is missing," or even worse, "Without it, I can't relax." A missing thing has gravity. It pulls the mind back again and again, not with devotion, but with tension. The present becomes a waiting room. Your days become rehearsals for the moment you finally have and can finally breathe. What you call motivation begins to feel like pressure in the chest, tightness in the jaw, a restless scanning of time. Not yet, not yet, not yet. Here is where Thoth becomes terrifyingly practical. He would not praise passivity. The myths do not romanticize laziness. Thoth is the patron of craft and study, of work that is accurate, patient, precise. But he would ask you to notice the difference between movement and lunging, between building and forcing, between devotion and desperation. There is a kind of effort that is stable. It has rhythm. It can rest without losing direction. It can adjust without calling adjustment failure. And then there is chase effort, which feels like a sprint in the dark. Chase effort doesn't listen. It checks again. It refreshes the page of reality to see if it changed yet. It is fueled by the fear that if you stop pushing, you will fall behind, and the fear becomes the engine. In the old temples, mirrors were tests. They reflected your face, yes, but they also reflected your state. A mirror shows what you carry without needing you to confess it. Thoth's rule works the same way. It shows you that the delay you experience is often not outside you, in some cruel universe withholding reward. The delay is inside the way you are reaching, because reaching with clenched hands narrows your vision. Think of something simple. You lose your keys. If you search calmly, attention stays wide. You notice small details. You move with quiet intelligence. But the moment panic enters, attention collapses. You rush. You overlook what is right in front of you. The keys haven't moved, but your mind has shifted into noise. This is the structure of pursuit in every area of life. Chase creates inner rushing. Inner rushing creates noise. Noise makes you miss timing, miss people, miss openings, miss the subtle, yes, that doesn't shout. It's not that reality punishes desire. It's that lack-charged desire makes you clumsy. Now notice what happens when the chase is aimed at something heavy with meaning: relationship, creative work, money, recognition, healing. When you believe the outcome will finally numb a shame, erase a fear, prove your worth, your grip tightens. And grip changes everything. Grip makes one outcome feel like the only outcome. It makes you ignore information that contradicts your plan. It makes you treat timing as an enemy. It makes you push on doors that aren't yours, and then call the bruises persistence. It can even make you sabotage the very thing you asked for, because you can't receive it without the nervous system screaming, "Don't lose this." Thoth, the scribe, is the archetype of recognition. He does not create the world, he reads it. And he knows that what arrives in your life is often less about what is available and more about what you can perceive, tolerate, and receive. Opportunity can stand in front of you and still be invisible if your state is too narrowed to see it. Love can be offered and still feel unsafe if your inner story requires proving. Success can appear and still slip through your hands if you have trained yourself to live in rehearsal instead of reality. So the reversal begins with posture, not with magic. It begins with an honest question. Are you walking like a pilgrim or running like a pursuer? A pilgrim moves with devotion. A pursuer moves with panic. Both may take action. Both may work hard. But the pilgrim is in relationship with the process. The pursuer is trying to escape the present. The pilgrim can learn. The pursuer can only demand. Chasing speaks in deadlines and threats. It turns the future into a courtroom where you will be judged as soon as the verdict arrives. Thoth measures time differently. Measurement, in the sacred sense, is not obsession, it's clarity. It is knowing when to act and when to wait, when to press and when to rest, when to speak and when to listen. Chasing collapses all of this into one command. More effort, more proving, more checking, more control. But control has a hidden cost. It announces mistrust. It says, I don't believe the path will hold me unless I strangle it. And that mistrust becomes its own delay because it keeps you in a state that cannot hear the next instruction. The first gift of Thoth's reverse success rule is simply this. It helps you catch the moment desire becomes a grip. The moment your wanting stops being a direction and becomes a threat. The moment you start treating your goal as a life raft instead of a destination. When you can see that moment, you don't have to argue with it. You just have to recognize it, the way a scribe recognizes ink. Because behind every chase is a belief. A belief about lack. A belief about time. A belief about who you are without the prize. And once you can see the belief clearly, you're finally close enough to change the spell that has been writing your delays. And once you can see the belief, you start noticing how it behaves, like something alive that feeds on attention. It doesn't sit quietly in your mind as a thought. It changes your breathing. It tightens your jaw. It makes your eyes search a room as if the room is hiding an answer. Ordinary moments begin to feel like signs. This is the intimate mechanism inside Thoth's reverse success rule. The delay is not always outside you, in some mysterious universe withholding reward. Often the delay is the way your inner state reshapes the field you're moving through. A calm mind can treat uncertainty as neutral. A threatened mind turns uncertainty into danger. And chasing is what happens when desire gets welded to that sense of danger. In simple terms, chasing is what you do when your nervous system decides, we can't wait. Scarcity, in this context, isn't only about money or food. It's the felt sense of not enough living inside the body. Not enough time, not enough love, not enough recognition, not enough certainty, not enough control. When that sensation is active, you don't just want an outcome. You need it to soothe something you don't know how to soothe from within. The outcome becomes medicine. The future becomes a pharmacy. And your present becomes a fever you're trying to break. Psychology has a plain observation. When the mind believes resources are scarce, attention narrows. It begins scanning. It focuses harder. It becomes vigilant. That vigilance can be useful in emergencies, but it is terrible for living. It turns you into a searchlight, bright, intense, and narrow. It can illuminate one thing perfectly while leaving everything else in darkness. And darkness is where alternatives live. This is one reason chasing delays you. Scarcity thinking doesn't only create urgency. It creates tunnel vision. You stop noticing side doors because you've decided the only door is the one you're pushing. You stop hearing feedback because feedback feels like threat. You stop reading timing because timing feels like insult. You call it persistence, but it's often a kind of deafness, an inability to receive information that would save you time. Lack has another hunger. It wants meaning. It cannot tolerate neutrality. So a slow reply becomes a personal verdict. A missed opportunity becomes a prophecy. A single critique becomes evidence that you never deserved your place. The mind translates the world into a story about deficiency, and then it reacts to that story as if it were fact. The body doesn't know the difference between a real threat and a feared one. It responds anyway. Quicker heartbeat, restless thoughts, a tightening in the stomach that says, do something. Now. So you do something. You check. You refresh. You push. You message again. You overwork. You rehearse conversations you haven't had. You chase certainty like water. For a moment, it feels like control, and control feels like relief. But relief isn't trust. Relief is the pressure dropping for a second. Trust is stable ground. Chasing trains you to pursue relief again and again until the pursuit becomes the habit you can't stop. You don't only chase the goal. You chase the quiet that you believe the goal will grant you. This is where the trap becomes self-reinforcing. Every time you reach outward to calm inward discomfort, you teach your system a lesson. I am not okay until something out there changes. The lesson sinks deeper with repetition. Over time, the body learns to live in not yet. It learns to treat waiting as danger. It learns to treat calm as negligence. And then, even when the thing arrives, the mind may not recognize arrival. It will look for the next gap. It will raise the bar. It will feel suspicious of peace. It will keep moving, because stillness no longer feels safe. The chase didn't end. It changed costumes. Thoth, the keeper of records, would call this a false ledger. You think the frantic burst is what creates results, because sometimes results follow a frantic burst. But the human brain loves simple stories. If you panic, then soon after something resolves, the nervous system credits the panic as the cause. It writes, the panic worked. So next time you panic sooner. You grip faster. You chase harder. But what you're really chasing is the momentary soothing that comes when you believe you've done enough to prevent loss. This is why chasing feels exhausting. Not because effort is bad, but because fear-based effort demands constant proof. It can't rest, because rest feels like risk. It can't be present, because presence feels like vulnerability. It is always trying to outrun uncertainty. Yet uncertainty is part of every meaningful outcome. Even the most disciplined plan contains unknowns, other people's choices, timing, chance meetings, delays, sudden openings. Someone who can tolerate uncertainty without collapsing can move through those unknowns with elegance. Someone who cannot tolerate uncertainty will try to crush it with force. But uncertainty doesn't yield to force. It yields to clarity and timing, and those require a calmer state than chase mode can sustain. This is why lack steals the very quality success needs. It steals patience, because patience feels like threat. It steals creativity, because creativity requires spaciousness. It steals discernment, because discernment needs quiet. It steals magnetism, because magnetism comes from ease. You can still do a lot while lack is running the show, but the doing becomes brittle. It becomes a sprint that can't last, a performance that can't breathe. In relationships, the psychic law of lack turns affection into surveillance. You don't just share, you monitor. You interpret small shifts as danger signals. You keep checking whether you're safe. To you it feels like care, but to another person it can feel like pressure. The very intimacy you want gets crowded out by the need to be reassured. In money and work, lack turns building into compulsion. You don't work because you're creating, you work because you're trying to silence dread. You trade long-term intelligence for short-term relief. Then the results become unstable because the fuel was unstable. In creative life, lack turns art into audition. You begin listening for applause before the work has finished speaking. You rush depth to get approval. You bend your voice to fit a trend. People can feel it, not as a judgment, but as a tone. Hunger has a sound. Underneath all of this, there's usually a younger part of you holding the wheel. A part that learned, long ago, that safety was conditional. That love could disappear. That attention had to be earned. That mistakes had consequences. That the door might close without warning. When that younger part is steering, desire doesn't feel like a direction. It feels like a deadline. And deadlines create panic. So Thoth's mirror becomes mercilessly clear. You're not only chasing success. You're chasing permission. Permission to relax. Permission to matter. Permission to feel safe. The mind puts that permission in the future and calls it motivation. But when permission is always in the future, the present becomes a waiting room, and waiting rooms make people desperate. Now the spiritual language and the psychological language touch the same truth. Your state shapes your perception. Your perception shapes your choices. Your choices shape your outcomes. A mind rehearsing not enough becomes a detective of deprivation. It collects evidence. It builds a case. And then it wonders why life feels like a trial. The psychic law of lack is not a curse. It's a pattern you can finally name. And naming it matters, because the second you recognize lack as a state, not as reality, you loosen its grip. You stop confusing urgency with truth. You begin to feel, in the body, the moment chasing starts, the moment the mind says, "We can't wait." And you realize that the voice isn't prophecy. It's a sensation asking to be met. And in that recognition, the hallway grows quieter again. The searchlight softens, not because you stopped wanting, but because you stopped feeding the spell that turns wanting into delay. And when you finally recognize lack as a state rather than a verdict, something subtle shifts. It's not fireworks. It's more like hearing a sound in the distance and realizing it was inside your own house all along. The panic doesn't vanish instantly, but it loses its authority. It stops sounding like destiny and starts sounding like a signal. This is the point where most people misunderstand what the ancient traditions mean by detachment. They imagine coldness. They imagine not caring. They imagine a spiritual personality that never wants anything, never hopes, never longs. But that isn't detachment. That's numbness wearing sacred clothing. Detachment, in the older, more honest sense, is not the absence of desire. It is desire without possession. It is love without gripping. It is intention without the hidden threat of, if this doesn't happen, I am ruined. If you could stand in Thoth's temple long enough, you would notice the difference in the air between a prayer and a demand. A prayer has space in it. A demand is cramped. A prayer says, "Let what is true arrive." A demand says, "Let what I fear not happen." And that distinction, quiet as it looks, changes everything. Because chasing is not only an action, it is a posture of the soul. It is a way of leaning into the future so hard that you abandon the present. And the present is the only place where the next door can be seen. In Hermetic language, those teachings that carry Thoth's name like a seal, the world is not built only of objects and events. It is built of correspondences. Inner state and outer pattern are braided. As within, so without. Not as a slogan, but as a diagnostic. If your inner world is tight, suspicious, hungry, the outer world begins to look like something you have to fight for, chase, seize, defend. If your inner world becomes steadier, the outer world starts revealing what was always there. Timing, openings, allies, the right moment to speak, the right moment to wait. Detachment is the alchemy that turns that inner tightening into space. And space is not emptiness. Space is capacity. It is the room in which reality can place something new. Think of it like this. If your hands are clenched, you can't receive. It doesn't matter how generous life is. A clenched fist can strike, it can hold, it can resist, but it cannot be given something gently. You can only receive with an open hand. This is why the paradox is true. The more you chase, the more you delay, because chasing closes the hand. It closes the mind. It closes the body. It narrows your capacity to recognize what is already moving toward you. It also changes how others feel around you. People sense hunger. They feel when they are being turned into a solution rather than met as a person. They feel when your eyes are listening, but your nervous system is bargaining. Even opportunities have a way of backing away from desperation, not out of cruelty, but out of natural physics. Neediness makes the field unstable. It demands immediate certainty from things that unfold over time. Detachment is not laziness. It is not stopping. It is moving with a different center of gravity. There is a moment, in mythic imagery, where a soul is weighed against a feather, the feather of Ma'at, the principle of truth, balance, and right order. In the story, it isn't your achievements that determine the weight. It's what you carry. It's what clings to you. It's what you refuse to release. The heart becomes heavy not because it desires, but because it clutches. You could reinterpret that scene without losing its sacred power. When you chase, you load your desire with extra weight. You add fear. You add shame. You add comparison. You add urgency. You add the old story that says love must be earned and safety must be fought for. And then you wonder why your path feels slow. You are trying to run while carrying stones. Detachment is the art of putting the stones down while still walking toward what matters. This is why it feels like alchemy. Alchemy was never only about turning lead into gold. It was about transforming the inner substance of the seeker. The lead is the compulsive grasping, the need to control life like a frightened ruler. The gold is a quieter power, the ability to want something deeply and still remain whole without it, the ability to aim without trembling, the ability to act without pleading with the result. When that transformation begins, the world responds in ways that seem almost supernatural, but are actually painfully logical. Your perception widens. You start noticing the side doors. Your conversations change tone. You stop talking like someone asking permission and start speaking like someone expressing truth. You become more precise. Your energy stops leaking into rehearsals and returns to the moment in front of you. And the moment in front of you is where influence lives. Detachment also does something to time. When you're chasing, time feels like a predator. Every day that passes is proof you're failing. Every delay feels like humiliation. But when you release the grip, time becomes a landscape again. Not a weapon, not a verdict. A landscape with weather and seasons and currents. In that landscape, waiting is not punishment. Waiting is a kind of listening. The spiritual philosopher would say detachment aligns you with the current rather than fighting the river. The psychologist would say detachment moves you from threat response into a state where problem solving and social connection are available. Different languages, same doorway. When the nervous system is no longer screaming, you can sense what is true. You can feel whether something is for you. You can detect the difference between an obstacle asking for patience and a wall telling you to turn. Here is where many seekers stumble. They try to detach, like it's a trick to get what they want faster. But that's still chasing, only now dressed in incense. The universe can feel that. Your own body can feel that. The moment detachment becomes manipulation, it collapses into the same cramped energy as before. You're still bargaining with life. Real detachment is more honest. It says, I want this, and I will move toward it, but I will not make my life a hostage to it. That sentence, if you could live it even a little, would change the shape of your days. Because hostage living is what drains you. Hostage living is what turns love into anxiety and work into compulsion and dreams into pressure. When you detach, you stop trying to squeeze certainty out of the future. You stop interrogating reality for signs that you're safe. You begin building safety as a state you carry. And as soon as safety becomes something you generate internally, your relationship to outcomes changes. You become able to receive them without worshiping them. You become able to lose them without collapsing. That is not indifference. That is freedom. And freedom is magnetic. Not in a cartoon way, like people floating toward you for no reason. Magnetic in the way a calm person in a chaotic room becomes a lighthouse. Magnetic in the way a grounded artist makes others lean in. Magnetic in the way a leader who isn't starving for approval can finally hear the truth. You don't attract because you manifest. You attract because you no longer repel with desperation. You become easier to trust, easier to work with, easier to love, easier to support. Even your own mind becomes easier to live in. There is also a more mysterious side to detachment, the kind that Thoth's presence seems to whisper from the edges of the story. In a universe of correspondences, the thing you grip becomes the thing that defines you. If you grip money, you become a person defined by fear of poverty. If you grip love, you become a person defined by fear of abandonment. If you grip recognition, you become a person defined by fear of being unseen. The grip makes the feared reality your identity's shadow. Detachment breaks that spell. It loosens the identity from the object. And when identity loosens, life has room to surprise you. Because the most exquisite arrivals in life rarely come through force. They come through alignment. You meet someone because you weren't trying so hard to impress. You hear an idea because you weren't drowning it in noise. You notice an opportunity because you weren't fixated on one narrow plan. You create something real because you stop trying to make it win and let it speak. Detachment is not the end of desire. It is desire returning to its rightful place. As a guiding star, not a chain. And as you walk forward with that star above you, you begin to sense why Thoth's rule is not an insult to ambition. It is a correction to the inner distortion that turns ambition into desperation. It is a reminder that the doorway is not opened by pounding on it. The doorway is opened by arriving with the right key. And the key, more often than not, is an open hand. An open hand is not a metaphor you admire and then forget. It's a posture you practice, the way you practice breathing when you realize you've been holding your breath for years. Because the old reflex will return. The world will still throw delays, silence, ambiguity, surprise. The nervous system will still try to interpret uncertainty as danger. The chase will still try to recruit you. So the question becomes quietly practical. How do you move toward what you want without turning movement into pursuit? How do you keep devotion without gripping? How do you act from intention rather than from lack? The reverse success rule is not asking you to stop. It is asking you to shift the engine inside your action. And that engine can be trained. Think of it as two movements that repeat, like a tide. One movement sets direction. The other releases the chokehold. The first is about clarity. The second is about spaciousness. If you try only spaciousness without clarity, you drift. If you try only clarity without spaciousness, you chase. Reverse success is the rhythm that holds both. The first movement is choosing clean intention. Clean intention sounds simple, but most intentions are not clean. They come with hidden bargains. They come with a thread inside them. They come with a desperate subtitle. So I can finally be okay. A clean intention is when you want the thing for what it truly is, not for what you hope it will prove. It might be money because you want freedom and stability, not because you need to show the world you're not weak. It might be love because you want connection, not because you need to erase loneliness like a stain. It might be success because you want to build something meaningful, not because you're trying to reverse an old humiliation. When the subtitle is "So I Can Finally Be Okay," you turn the intention into a rescue mission. That's chase energy. So clean intention begins with a private honesty. What do I actually want? And what am I secretly trying to silence? If you can answer that without shaming yourself, you are already detaching. Because you're pulling the hidden need into the light, where it can be held directly rather than smuggled into the future. In practice, clean intention is not long. It's not poetic. It's precise. It's almost plain. It might sound like, I'm building a business that supports my family and serves people well. Or, I'm creating work that feels true to me. Or, I want a relationship where I can be honest and safe. Nothing mystical. But inside the body, it lands differently. It feels like a straight line rather than a knot. Then you choose what the next faithful action is. Not the next frantic action. The next faithful one. Faithful action is action you'd still take even if you couldn't guarantee the outcome immediately. It's action that makes sense in the long arc. It is the kind of step you take because it is aligned with who you are becoming, not because it will instantly relieve your anxiety. If you want health, faithful action is the next meal, the next walk, the next hour of sleep, not the fantasy of a perfect future body. If you want mastery, faithful action is the next practice session, the next page, the next small correction, not the compulsion to be brilliant today. If you want love, faithful action is showing up honestly, communicating clearly, maintaining self-respect, not chasing someone's attention like oxygen. Notice how faithful action has a certain dignity. It doesn't beg. It doesn't scream. It moves. It is quiet effort with integrity. And after you take that action, you do something that feels almost impossible at first. You close the loop. Closing the loop means you let the action be complete. You stop dragging it into the future by obsessing over whether it worked yet. You stop rechecking the world to see if it rewarded you. You acknowledge, inside yourself, that was the step. It is done. Then you return to your life. That return is not giving up. It is keeping your nervous system from turning each step into a desperate gamble. Because the chase thrives on constant monitoring. It wants you to live at the edge of your inbox, the edge of your bank account, the edge of someone's response, the edge of the scoreboard. It wants you to stare at the oven and wonder why the bread isn't rising yet. Closing the loop is stepping away from the oven. This is where the second movement comes in, releasing the chokehold. Release is not a thought. It's a behavior. It's the act of not feeding the anxious loop. Most people try to release by telling themselves, "I'm detached," while they keep checking, keep refreshing, keep worrying. That doesn't work because the body believes behavior more than words. So release has to be visible in your day. It looks like doing your work and then leaving the room mentally. It looks like setting a time to review outcomes, instead of reviewing outcomes every 10 minutes. It looks like having a ritual that tells your nervous system, "We acted, now we live." Some people find this in prayer. Not the prayer that begs, but the prayer that places the desire on an altar and steps back. Some find it in breath work, slow exhale, longer than inhale, telling the body it is safe to be here. Some find it in physical movement, walking until the urgency drains out of the limbs. Some find it in service, helping someone else for an hour, which breaks the trance of self-obsession. The method matters less than the principle. Release must interrupt the chase's need to monitor. If you want it to be even more concrete, imagine you have two selves, the scribe and the hunter. The hunter believes everything is prey. If it doesn't catch it, it will starve. The hunter is not evil. It's protective. It's trying to keep you safe. But it will ruin your life if it runs your entire strategy, because it cannot tell the difference between real survival and psychological discomfort. The scribe is Thoth's part within you. The scribe measures, tracks, chooses the next step, then sets the pen down. The scribe trusts that what is planted needs time. The scribe knows that obsession does not speed growth. The scribe knows when to look and when to stop looking. Reverse success practice is training yourself to act like the scribe more often than the hunter. So you set intention. You take one faithful action. You close the loop. You release the monitoring. Then, at a chosen time, once a day, once a week, you review reality with calm eyes. You adjust if needed. You take the next faithful action. And again you close the loop. That rhythm, act, release, does something profound. It teaches your nervous system that it can move forward without panicking. It teaches your mind that waiting is not danger. It builds internal trust. And internal trust is the invisible ingredient behind every form of success that doesn't destroy you. There's another practical piece here that people often skip because it feels too ordinary, but it's one of the most esoteric truths disguised as common sense. Your environment is part of your nervous system. If your environment is constant stimulation, constant comparison, constant news, constant social proof, constant scrolling, your mind will stay in chase mode because it will keep seeing new reasons to feel behind. So reverse success practice includes guarding the mind from unnecessary urgency. It includes choosing what you consume. It includes limiting the places where comparison feeds lack. It includes building pockets of quiet where your intention can settle. This is not about being fragile. It's about being strategic. The most powerful minds in history have always known that attention is sacred. The scribe doesn't write well in a stampede. And as you do this, you begin to experience a strange, almost humbling phenomenon. The less you chase outcomes, the more you start hitting them. Not because you stopped caring, but because your action becomes smarter. Your timing improves. Your relationships soften. Your creativity returns. You make decisions based on truth rather than panic. You stop sabotaging yourself with desperation. You become consistent because you're no longer burning yourself out on sprints. Consistency is one of the most underrated forms of magic. It doesn't feel dramatic, but it reshapes destiny. And slowly, something else happens. The outcome is no longer the only reward. The process becomes nourishing because you're not at war with it. You begin living again while moving toward what you want. You stop treating your current life as an obstacle. You stop postponing your peace. That, in itself, is success reversing back into its natural order. Life first, then results. Not results first, then permission to live. And now the chase has a weaker hold, because it thrives on the promise that peace is later. When you begin to build peace now, the chase loses its bargaining power. It can't threaten you as easily. It can't say, "If you don't get this, you'll be nothing," because you have begun proving, quietly, daily, that you can be whole while you build. This is the practice. Not heroic, not glamorous, but it's how the rule becomes real. It's how the open hand learns to work, to create, to love, to aim, without turning into a fist. And as you settle into this rhythm, you will eventually meet what every seeker meets, the next layer of resistance. Not from the world, but from inside. The old triggers that whisper, yes, but what if it's too slow? The shadow hooks that pull you back into urgency as soon as something matters. That's where it always gets interesting, because the moment you stop chasing, the chase doesn't simply vanish. It changes tactics. It becomes more psychological. It becomes quieter and more convincing. It will wait until something truly matters to you, and then it will whisper with absolute sincerity, now you have to hurry. This is why the reverse success rule feels spiritual. Not because it's mystical, but because it exposes the inner forces that masquerade as me. You begin to realize there are parts of you that do not actually want your freedom. They want your familiarity. They want the old pattern, because the old pattern is predictable even when it hurts. The first test usually arrives as a trigger of urgency. Urgency is seductive. It feels like leadership. It feels like clarity. It feels like power. But very often it's just fear wearing a uniform. You can detect it by its texture. True clarity is firm but calm. It has a clean edge. Urgency is sharp and restless. It comes with bodily agitation. It says, if you don't act right now, you'll regret it. It creates an inner countdown clock, even when no real clock exists. This is one of the chase's favorite tricks. It invents deadlines. Sometimes deadlines are real, of course. Planes do leave. Applications do close. Bodies do age. But the chase will take the ordinary truth of time and turn it into panic. It will compress your world into a single corridor and then push you down it. The spiritual problem with urgency is not that it makes you fast. It's that it makes you blind. Under urgency, you can't feel what is true. You can only feel what is necessary to relieve discomfort. And discomfort is not a reliable compass. The second test is control. When you stop chasing, you stop grabbing at life. You leave space. And space is terrifying to the part of you that believes space equals abandonment. Control is the attempt to fill that space with certainty. It's the urge to micromanage, to perfect, to plan every possible outcome, to keep the world from surprising you. Control looks like productivity on the surface, but underneath, it's avoidance. It's trying to avoid the feeling of not knowing. This is why some people, but the reassurance-hungry part will try to close the air. It will try to secure certainty by interrogating, clinging, over-explaining, over-texting, over-giving, over-fixing. It believes that if it can just lock the bond in place, the ache will stop. The ache doesn't stop. It only changes shape, because the ache was never only about the current relationship. It was about old wounds that learned to survive by scanning for abandonment. And that brings us to the deepest test, the shadow hook. The shadow, in psychological terms, is not evil. It's the parts of you that learn to hide. The parts you were told were too much or not enough. The desires that were shamed. The emotions that were punished. The needs that were inconvenient. The shadow is the exiled self. Chasing is often the shadow's strategy for returning. Because if you can become successful enough, beautiful enough, important enough, then maybe you'll finally be allowed to exist fully. So the chase isn't just about outcomes. It's about reclaiming a banished part of you through external achievement. This is why chasing feels like life or death. It is not only the goal at stake, it's your right to be seen. When you practice detachment, you threaten the shadow's plan. You stop offering the shadow a deal like, I'll earn my worth later. You begin giving yourself worth now, through presence, through honesty, through care. And the shadow protests because its old bargaining system is collapsing. That protest can look like self-sabotage. Suddenly, just as things begin to improve, you procrastinate. You pick a fight. You numb out. You make a reckless decision. You forget to follow up. You drop the practice. Not because you're lazy, but because an inner part is terrified of what success would mean. Success would mean you can't keep the old story. You can't keep the identity of the struggler. You can't keep the familiar pain that at least makes sense. Success would mean you have to step into a new self, one that receives, one that is visible, one that could be judged, one that could lose what it gained. The shadow would rather you chase forever than arrive and face the terror of receiving. So the tests come. Urgency, control, comparison, reassurance, sabotage. They are not signs you're doing it wrong. They are signs you touched the real mechanism. Thoth's archetype within you responds not with drama, but with measurement. This is where the scribe becomes your inner protector. When the trigger hits, the scribe doesn't shame you. It records. It names. It says, this is urgency. It says, this is control. It says, this is comparison. It says, this is a reassurance hunger. It says, this is the shadow trying to keep the old bargain alive. Naming is not intellectual. Naming is stabilizing. When you name a state, you stop being possessed by it. You create a tiny space between the sensation and the command. And in that space, you regain choice. Then you do something that looks almost too simple to matter. You slow down your body. Because triggers live in the body first. A thought may announce them, but the body is already in motion. Tight chest, clenched stomach, shallow breath. If you try to think your way out while the body is still in threat, you'll lose. The body will keep voting for urgency. So you lengthen the exhale. You drop the shoulders. You unclench the jaw. You ground the feet. You take one slow breath as if you are telling the nervous system, we are not dying. You might even place a hand on the chest, not as a performance, but as a signal of presence. I'm here. Then you return to the rhythm you built in the previous section. Faithful action, then release. Triggers want you to do more. Faithful action asks you to do what is true. Sometimes what is true is taking the step. Sometimes what is true is waiting. Sometimes what is true is speaking one clear sentence instead of sending 10 anxious messages. Sometimes what is true is stopping work for the night because your exhaustion is turning your effort into desperation. Sometimes what is true is making the call you've avoided, not to force an outcome, but to clarify reality. The shadow hates clarification because clarification removes fantasy. The shadow prefers the drama of maybe because maybe keeps the chase alive. Clarification either opens a door or closes it, and both are painful if you've used uncertainty as a way to postpone truth. But Thoth is a god of truth, not of comfort. The comfort comes later, as a side effect of living accurately. Over time, if you keep practicing, you begin to recognize the triggers earlier. You catch the chase at the doorway instead of after it has rearranged your whole day. You start feeling the difference between healthy intensity and frantic urgency. You start noticing when you're about to text for reassurance rather than for connection. You notice when you're about to overwork to numb dread rather than to build. And each time you choose differently, you rewrite the inner record. This is the quiet miracle. You stop training your nervous system to believe that panic is necessary. You start training it to believe that calm is safe. You start training it to believe that waiting does not equal abandonment. You start training it to believe that you can be seen without being destroyed. At that point, something changes about you that other people can feel. You are no longer negotiating with reality. You are collaborating with it. Your energy stops tugging and starts inviting. And invitations are powerful because they don't violate timing. They don't demand. They make space for the right answer to arrive. This is why the tests are sacred. They are the gates. They are the places where the old self tries to reclaim the throne. And if you can meet those gates without collapsing into the chase, you are no longer just practicing a technique. You are becoming someone else. Someone who can want without gripping. Someone who can move without forcing. Someone who can be patient without going numb. Someone who can accept no without turning it into a story of worthlessness. Someone who can accept not yet without making it a prison. And now, with that new inner posture, you are ready for the most mysterious part of the whole law, the part people rarely expect. Because once you stop chasing, things begin to arrive. Not always in the way you scripted, not always on your preferred timeline, but with a distinct feeling, quiet inevitability, as if the world had been waiting for you to stop strangling it. As if the world had been waiting for you to stop strangling it. That is a strange sentence until you've lived it, and then it becomes almost embarrassing in its simplicity. You realize you were wrestling the river and calling the struggle progress, while the current was offering you movement the entire time. But it couldn't carry you until you stopped gripping the water like it was an enemy. When the chase releases, the first thing that arrives is not the goal. It's silence. Not an empty silence, but a clean one. The kind that makes your thoughts sound louder for a moment, because you're no longer drowning them in activity. That silence can feel unsettling at first. The mind will try to fill it. It will search for problems the way a tongue searches for a missing tooth. But if you stay with it, if you don't rush to manufacture urgency, you begin to notice something else. You begin to notice what you actually want. Not what you wanted because you were afraid. Not what you wanted because you were performing. Not what you wanted because someone else's life made you feel behind. What you want, when the nervous system is not bargaining, often becomes quieter and more refined. It becomes less about proving and more about living. Less about applause and more about alignment. This is one of the hidden gifts of Thoth's reverse success rule. It makes your desires more intelligent. Because the chase often drives you toward outcomes that look impressive but feel wrong once you hold them. The chase is blind to cost. It asks only, will this make me safe? But safety, when pursued through external trophies, is a moving target. It always relocates. So detachment doesn't only speed arrival, it upgrades the destination. Then, in that quieter clarity, the world begins to respond in a different language. Not with dramatic miracles, but with coincidences that feel like the universe clearing its throat. You meet the person you needed to meet because you were finally present enough to look up. You catch the detail you used to miss because your mind wasn't shouting. You make a decision that would have terrified the old you, like walking away from something that looks good but isn't true, and the act of walking away opens a space that gets filled. Space gets filled. That's a law as old as temples. But there is a crucial nuance. The space gets filled by what matches the person you are now, not the person you were when you were chasing. That's why the arrival can look different than you expected. You might have wanted recognition from one crowd, and instead you find a smaller audience that actually cares. You might have wanted a relationship that soothed your anxiety, and instead you find a relationship that requires honesty, but gives you peace. You might have wanted money as proof, and instead money arrives as a tool, in the context of meaningful work, and it feels clean rather than addictive. Chasing tries to force the form. Detachment lets the essence arrive. This is where people sometimes get confused again. They think detachment means they shouldn't care about results at all. But the reverse success rule never said results don't matter. It said the chase delays. It said obsession distorts timing. It said gripping makes you clumsy. It didn't say you should stop aiming. Aiming matters. Direction matters. Thoth is the god of measurement. He respects precision. The difference is that when you are no longer chasing, you aim like an archer rather than lunging like a hunter. An archer doesn't run after the arrow. The archer sets stance, breath, alignment, releases, and then watches. If the arrow lands off, the archer adjusts stance, not identity. The archer doesn't declare, I am worthless because the arrow missed. The archer simply learns. That is what quiet arrival really depends on, identity. Because your identity is what turns time into suffering. If you identify as someone who is late, every delay becomes shame. If you identify as someone who must prove their worth, every slow season becomes humiliation. If you identify as someone who is unlovable until chosen, every silence becomes rejection. The reverse success rule, at its deepest level, is asking you to stop tying identity to outcomes. Not because outcomes aren't meaningful, but because identity tied to outcomes becomes a hostage situation. And hostage situations create chase energy. So what identity supports quiet arrival? It's the identity of someone who is already in relationship with what they value. Someone who is already living the qualities they seek. Someone who does not postpone their character until the world applauds. Someone who is practicing the life now, in small ways, while the bigger forms assemble. If you want love, you practice being loving without being servile. You practice boundaries without cruelty. You practice honesty without dramatics. If you want abundance, you practice stewardship without panic. You practice generosity within your limits. You practice clear decisions. If you want recognition, you practice excellence when no one is watching. You practice finishing. You practice depth. If you want peace, you practice returning to breath, returning to truth, returning to a life that does not revolve around proving. This is why people who have it all can still be miserable. They chased forms, not qualities. They acquired trophies, not inner stability. They arrived at the destination but never built the capacity to live there. The reverse success rule teaches you to build capacity first, so when the form arrives, it doesn't crush you. Capacity is the spiritual side of receiving. Receiving is not automatic. Receiving is a skill. You can see this in people who finally get what they've wanted for years and then immediately feel anxious, suspicious, overwhelmed, or numb. The mind says, "I should be happy," but the body doesn't trust it. The body expects loss, so it begins preparing for loss by tightening, controlling, checking, clinging. The chase returns, now wrapped around the prize. Quiet arrival happens when you can hold what comes without gripping it. And that means learning a new relationship with impermanence. Because everything you want is also something you could lose. Even the most beautiful love contains the truth of change. Even the most stable money contains the truth of fluctuation. Even the most successful career contains the truth of seasons. The chase tries to solve impermanence by owning life. Detachment acknowledges impermanence and chooses to live anyway. This is where spiritual philosophy becomes more than a mood. It becomes a discipline, to want, to build, to love, while staying awake to the fact that nothing is guaranteed. Not as nihilism, but as reverence. Because when you stop demanding guarantees, you become able to appreciate what is here without fear. And appreciation is not passive, it's an energetic form of presence. Presence is what makes your life feel like it's actually happening, not like it's waiting to begin. Now, if we return to the mythic frame, Thoth's role as a scribe becomes even more meaningful. A scribe does not create the river, but the scribe understands the current. The scribe knows that timing is part of truth. Sometimes the delay you experience is not punishment. Sometimes it is protection. Sometimes it is training. Sometimes it is the universe refusing to give you a form you are not ready to receive. Chasing interprets that refusal as cruelty. Detachment interprets it as information. And information allows you to cooperate. When you cooperate with timing, you do not become passive. You become precise. You become someone who can act at the right moment rather than exhaust yourself acting at every moment. You begin making fewer moves, but they land harder because they are aligned. You stop scattering energy across panic projects and instead concentrate it into faithful steps. Then there's the most mysterious piece, the way the world treats you when you are not needy. People speak differently to you. They offer more honesty. They respect you more. They feel less manipulated. They sense you are not trying to extract something from them to stabilize your self-worth. And because they feel safe, they become more generous, not as a transaction, but as a natural response to steadiness. Opportunities also behave differently. They often arrive through relationship, through trust, through reputation. Chase energy damages reputation because it makes you erratic, reactive, overly hungry. Detachment repairs reputation because it makes you consistent, calm, and clear. None of this is superstition. It's social physics. Even your own mind becomes more reliable. In chase mode, you make promises you can't keep because you're negotiating from anxiety. In detached mode, you commit more realistically. You begin finishing things. You begin choosing fewer goals and going deeper. Depth compounds. Depth creates mastery. Mastery creates outcomes that look effortless from the outside, but are simply the result of steady attention over time. And that's when success starts to feel like it's arriving on its own. People call it luck, but luck, very often, is just a nervous system that isn't sabotaging your timing. So the quiet arrival of what you want is not one moment. It is an atmosphere. It is the feeling that your life is no longer moving against itself, that the inner and the outer are not at war, that you are not forcing reality to validate you. You are living and building and allowing the results to ripen. And when something does arrive, money, love, recognition, clarity, you receive it like someone who is already whole. You don't worship it. You don't cling. You don't panic. You thank it. You use it. You share it. You let it move through you. And you remain steady, because your steadiness is no longer rented from the future. It is owned in the present. That is why the reverse success rule is not only about getting what you want. It is about becoming the kind of person who can want without being enslaved, who can work without being haunted, who can love without gripping, who can succeed without collapsing into fear of loss. In that sense, the most profound success is not the outcome. It is the freedom you have while pursuing it. And that freedom, quiet, grounded, patient, is the true signature of Thoth's wisdom. The scribe writes it in your life not with words, but with your rhythm. Intention, faithful action, release. Intention, faithful action, release. And then, like a tide you don't have to command, the shore begins filling with the very things you once tried to chase down. You don't have to fight the chase with anger. Anger still gives it attention. You don't have to exile it with shame. Shame will only make it hide and return later with new disguises. You can meet it the way a scribe meets ink, with clarity. You can say softly, "I see you." And then you can do the more powerful thing. Return to the present, return to breath, return to the next faithful step. Because the strange truth is that life is not waiting for you to become perfect before it rewards you. It's waiting for you to stop treating reward as your oxygen. It's waiting for you to stop turning your desire into a courtroom. It's waiting for you to move with dignity again. And dignity isn't a mood. It's a practice, to act without begging, to rest without guilt, to wait without panic, to receive without gripping. If you remember nothing else, remember the sensation of your hands. When your mind starts racing, check your hands. Are they tight? Are you clenching your jaw? Are you holding your breath? That is the chase. Open your hand. Exhale slowly. Let your shoulders drop. Then ask for the next true step, not the next frantic step. And when you take it, let it be complete. Let the world do its half. Let timing assemble what you cannot control. Let the river carry what the fist cannot hold. This isn't about giving up your dreams. It's about removing the poison from your pursuit. It's about becoming someone whose success doesn't cost their soul. And in that calmer, truer posture, you may find that what you wanted was already on its way, arriving quietly, as soon as you stopped running away from the only place you could ever meet it. If you've stayed with me to the end, then you've already proven something quietly powerful. You can listen without rushing, and you can want without gripping. So let's seal this the Thoth way, not with pleading, but with a clean record. Drop a comment below with this phrase: "My hands are open, and I move in truth." Let it be your signal to yourself that you're done feeding the chase. You're choosing faithful steps, clear timing, and quiet arrival.